let's get rolling here. Do you want me to play that video first? Would that be a good way to start to kind of explain who you are and what Coosa Riverkeeper about?
Sure.
Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah.
All right, guys. So here is and hopefully this works. Don't let me down. But this will kick us off for this discussion.
In Alabama, our rivers don't just take care of themselves. They rely on good folks like you and me to protect them and pass them on to our children and grandchildren to use and enjoy. Coosa Riverkeeper is a citizen-based nonprofit. Our mission is to protect, restore, and promote the Coosa River and its tributaries in Alabama.
Every weekend in the summer, our team tests water quality at popular swimming holes along the Coosa. You can text Swim Guide to 84483 to receive water quality alerts directly to your phone, or use the Waterkeeper Swim Guide app.
Did you know that there are fish consumption advisories on the Coosa? Visit coosariver.org/fish guide to check out our interactive map that shows you where advisories are on the lake, as well as local marinas, eateries, and even water temperature readings during peak season. We also offer the Coosa River Game Fish Guide, a great resource that will get you hooked on fishing on the Coosa lakes by introducing you to the different game species you can catch. Before you hit the water, be sure to check out our website at coosariver.org/fish guide.
We patrol 5 lakes and dozens of creeks to document pollution and stay in tune with what's happening on the river. You can report pollution by calling 205-981-6565 or by emailing us at pollution@coosariver.org. There's strength in numbers. Join us today by visiting coosariver.org, and be sure to check us out on social media. We'll see you on the river.
All right, guys. So we've got tonight Justinn Overton, the executive director of Coosa Riverkeepers. And if you're like me, you've seen Coosa Riverkeepers probably on the internet. You've come across a lot of the work. Obviously, a lot of us live around here. Water is part of our life. And I'll tell you, if you were at the Monday night event last Monday in Southside, it won't take you but about a second and a half to realize how passionate she is and how knowledgeable she is about what's about this topic. So we wanted to get her on again. We'll get into some questions, so drop those in there. We're going to try and get some of that stuff answered. But also, she's got 5 minutes tomorrow to talk to the city council about the environment. And the impacts that this can have, this rendering plant can have. That's 5 minutes is not nearly enough. So she's got piles and piles and piles of research. I'm sure she's not going to go on and on for 7 hours, but if y'all want to, I'm sure she will. So we want to give her some time as well tonight to get out some of the other information to educate us as the community. With the stuff that she can't get to. So with that being said, Justinn, thank you so much for dialing in. We appreciate the work you're doing. And I think if this week has taught me anything, it's taught me there's a lot of folks out there doing a lot of hard work that I honestly was not all that aware of. And so as I've dug in and researched, man, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate y'all inviting me into the fold and being able to speak about what the river means for our economy, as well as for what it means for quality of life for folks in Etowah County. Just a little bit about me and about how I got here. I think, people always say, how did you get to this point where you're paid to advocate for the Coosa? So I want to tell you a little bit about what I guess that journey for me. So my dad is from Anniston, and I grew up going to Logan Martin Lake. I mean, I was a kid, and for those of you that are parents, you probably have one of these kids. I was the kid that my mom would have to throw me a t-shirt because I was getting sunburned, but I wouldn't get out of the water. So I'd be like wearing this baggy t-shirt, and so my fingers would get pruny. I mean, I've always been drawn to water, and my mom and my dad's love language is fishing together. So, I was always on the lake, and as a kid, my dad, there was this, like, honestly, it's a ditch, like, now that I've been to it as an adult, but there was this, at the time, it looked like a creek, okay? When you're a kid, it's just like water trickling, and I really wanted to get in because I've always like turning over rocks and exploring stuff, and my dad was like, Justinn, no. And I am a very stubborn person, I will admit this, and was a very stubborn child. And so we just kept arguing. And he was like, Justinn, no, it'll make you sick. And I was like, Dad, the water's fine, And he later explained to me that, you can't always determine a body of water by how it looks, if it's safe or not. And I found out later that was actually a ditch that received PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, from the Monsanto plant. My family received settlement money from that. And, to this day, I'm still dealing with advocating for PCBs and remediation and how that affects fish consumption advisories. So, from a very early age, it never really made a whole lot of sense to me why we would degrade the physical environment that we all need, right? No matter who you are, where you live, how much money's in your bank account, we all deserve access to clean water. And especially in a state like Alabama that's rich with natural resources, I consider it to be a privilege, really, to be able to educate people about the inherent value that the river brings. Whether you're talking about it provides power for our communities, all the way down to it provides you dinner, throughout the summer. I'm sure a lot of y'all watching have participated in a fish fry or two. So, I went to school and studied environmental advocacy and made my own major at the University of Alabama, and then went to UAB and got a master certificate in nonprofit management. And I have worked in environmental nonprofits since college. I worked for the U.S. Green Building Council, and then I came here at Coosa Riverkeeper, and I've been here for 8 years. So I get paid to protect the river that has meant so much to my family. Like it to me, it's quite a privilege. So when I get up and you guys put a microphone in front of me and let me talk about it, I can't help but get really excited and get really passionate, because when there is a facility like this proposed animal rendering facility that's going to impact potentially little kids like me who wanted to get out on a creek and turn over rocks, I think it's my duty to speak up for the way that our environment and public health are completely and totally intertwined. You cannot act like impacts to air quality and water quality don't affect the quality of life within your communities. I mean, they absolutely do. So the concerns of odor is just one of the reasons that folks should be fired up and concerned about this facility. So Coosa Riverkeeper answers simple questions. Is it safe to swim here? Y'all saw in the video, we monitor water quality at 30 sites. We're expanding that next summer. Every single week, we do more testing on the Coosa River than our state agencies do. And it's not because we have more funding than our state agencies. It's because we're funded by people like you that are watching this tonight. We're a grassroots organization, and we depend on the generosity of folks like you to ensure that we can continue doing this work.
All right. Well, I am, guys, if y'all have questions for her, we're going to do that. If I'm not seeing a lot of questions, we're getting a lot of folks excited to hear you talk tomorrow.
Hey, Justin, I just want to say, so the first time we spoke on the phone, something that you said that really stuck with me, and I think a lot of us would agree, and a lot of us in the group that are engaged, you said, we're all environmental activists now. Right? I mean, we weren't yesterday, we weren't 2 weeks ago, but now I think a lot of people are understanding that there's a lot more that we need to learn. So myself, I'm very excited to have you on here and listen to what you got to say. So,
well, thank you. And I mean, I think in this state, so Alabama is the river state. We have more miles of rivers and streams than any other state in the United States of America. And I mean, what a gift that is, right? That, like a lot of things in life, when you are used to an abundance of something, you can oftentimes take it for granted. And so I think that when we start having these discussions, I think it's very, very important. And I would like to talk to y'all a little bit about the receiving creek and its water quality and what that means for Neely Henry, and then start talking a little bit about just things that I think that folks should prepare for if this facility is granted a permit from ADEM, and what an ADEM hearing is like, because I've been to a fair share of them, even during the pandemic. So, I mean, you just interrupt me with your questions, because I will talk literally the entire time. I think y'all have figured that out by now. So,
well, we've got one real quick, and maybe this will be a good way to start you off. Reba Stanley has asked, have you reviewed the documents? I'm assuming she's talking about the documents that Christy has dropped, which from while we were getting ready for coming on here, it sounds like you've reviewed a lot of documents. What's your take on the groundwater and runoff?
So thanks for the question, Reba. I have reviewed a lot of different documents, and a lot of them are permits that are not specific to this facility. So to answer your question, my take on the groundwater and runoff on the existing Dry Creek doesn't have any permitted polluters that are discharging into it. And so it's important to recognize that Dry Creek runs into Canoe Creek, okay? And then that Canoe Creek feeds Neely Henry Lake. And so one of the things that we're anticipating doing is taking some background samples to determine what the water quality is prior to if this rendering facility becomes under construction. That way I can say this is what the pH level, this is what conductivity was, this is what bacteria counts were, as well as taking a turbidity sample before construction. And then our plan is, if the facility is under construction, we'll monitor it for construction stormwater, making sure that they have all the BMPs, or best management practices, in place so that there isn't excess sediment making its way into the creek. Which a lot of people, you think to yourself, dirt can't hurt. Well, dirt is actually one of the leading pollutants in our waterways. If you've passed over a creek after a rain, it oftentimes looks like chocolate milk, right? And all that excess sediment is not good for fish and for filter feeders. So that's kind of our strategy right now. It's really hard for me as a riverkeeper to make assumptions because I don't have a water permit yet. I don't have, it's called an NPDES permit, a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. So I'm basically preparing myself by looking at the American Proteins NPDES permit, as well as I just wrote a comment letter on JCG Foods, which is a slaughterhouse that feeds into Big Wells, which feeds then into Lake Gadsden, which then makes its way into Neely Henry on the Coosa. So with all that to be said, don't hesitate to send me stuff, y'all, because I'd rather get it 6 times than not get it at all. I've also reviewed the geology of the area, which is very interesting. This site is prone to sinkholes. So I'd be interested to know if the rendering facility is going to make any structural changes about that, just given the geology of the area. So yes, who knew? Sinkholes.
Well, let me take a quick peek through here and see what questions we got. Let's see, Mike Weddington, what chemicals do Pilgrim's Pride propose to use to clean their wastewater, and what are the environmental impacts of these chemicals on the aquatic ecological system?
That's a great question. And again, because I don't have a copy of an NPDES permit, I don't want to speak out of term and make assumptions. So one of
how would you get one of those permits?
So they have to apply for them, and because of the nature of our work here at Coosa Riverkeeper, I get emails every Friday from Alabama Department of Environmental Management that has every permit that's been applied for through the Water Division, as well as any civil penalties that have been put on an individual or on an industry. So that's just something that's emailed to me. That is publicly available information. If you're interested in seeing what's going on in Etowah County in terms of ADEM permitting for air and water, you can visit adem.alabama.gov and sign up. But in terms of what I've read in other facilities, some things that we need to look for within the permitting process is a phosphorus limit, a nitrate limit, to ensure that they are not adding extra nutrients into Neely Henry Lake, which is already on Alabama Department of Environmental Management's impaired waterways for nutrient pollution. I'll talk about this tomorrow, but these chicken processing facilities that we have in this area are a huge problem for nutrient pollution. And nutrient pollution can do a lot of things, but how it affects us from a human situation is that you can have an excess of cyanobacteria. So if you hear about stuff like the red tide in Florida, or you hear about dogs drinking water and then dying, that is a type of cyanobacteria. And so this excess nutrient pollution can cause all kinds of issues that can range from like being really itchy when you get out of the lake, to, you know, death and your favorite furry friend. And I don't know about y'all, but I have been thinking about where I'm getting my dog food now, right? I mean, if any of you pet owners out there, my dog Stella she would be here right now, but she's at home with her dad. She comes to work with me every day. I mean, my dog means a lot to me. So it's certainly interesting when you think about how this affects you as a consumer, but I digress. The other thing to consider is ammonia.
Okay.
Ammonia is something that would be kept on site. But Mike, I can't answer that fully, and I don't want to speak out of turn until I have a permit, but I promise as soon as I can answer that in full, I will.
Okay. So as we were coming on, we were talking about, so right now, obviously the focus is you're trying to educate us, educate the decision makers that can stop this now before it becomes a thing, but you're preparing for the worst.
Yeah.
So when you say you're preparing for the worst, what are, you know, as we're talking about all the chemicals and all that kind of stuff, from what you've seen, the research you've done, I mean, what is the worst? What's the worst case that can happen?
Well, the worst case is that they start building this site and they do a really terrible job with their construction stormwater during construction, during what's the rainiest part of the year, right? You know, we are wet in the winter, right? Wet weather season. So that would be something initially that would be a worst case scenario. As they move into construction and complete their wastewater treatment plant, I will be monitoring for violations at every opportunity because it's just waiting to happen. Why would this plant be any better when their track record for non-compliance for their environmental permits is across the board? They have had 44 violations, resulting in over $5 million in penalties. So what makes Gadsden special or different when they have this track record? It makes no sense. Some other things that we'll be looking into is making sure that they are staying within the safe range for aquatic life for pH. You know, we had a terrible fish kill happen last year on the Mulberry Fork, and that was largely attributed to violations in pH. Another thing that we'll be looking at, worst case scenario, is making comments on their permits. ADEM is required to notify the public 30 days to have a comment period. So I basically wrote a comment letter today, just loosely based on what I anticipate the permit to be like. That is where folks can step in and submit comments on behalf of you and your family, which is an incredibly important process, but the hearing will be very interesting. In my 8 years,
Actually, I was just
So you were saying earlier we need as many of those ADEM numbers submitted as possible, correct? Do we need to get those?
Yeah, so the reason why I need those is because ADEM's very familiar with who we are and what we do. And so if I call ADEM and say I need a follow-up complaint numbers for this laundry list, I'm hoping that it will add a little pep in their step in responding to you as they're required to by law. I filed a complaint in the Coosa River Basin, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago for notice of violation. I was just driving by a grocery store, and they finally got back to me weeks later. So I just want to make sure that they know that we have your individual backs, and making sure that your comments are heard and your complaints are addressed. So please send those to us at Coosa Riverkeeper or submit them on the advancedetowah.com site.
Okay. So sticking with ADEM, the question of will ADEM be there tomorrow?
I very much doubt it. Yeah.
Okay. So what is the ADEM process? Is that kind of, you want to talk about that some?
I had some questions for you with ADEM, and just one
Fire
of my
away.
biggest questions is, when you're talking to the council versus ADEM and the two different hearings, what's your different approach and strategy for each of those? What appeals to each one of those boards the most?
ADEM likes technical comments. So if you are a person with any engineering experience or wastewater operation, they seem on a just overarching level to respond to technical comments more so than how this affects me. As I mentioned in the Southside meeting, ADEM rubber stamps permits. They really have very, very poor follow-up with permit violations. Which is how Coosa Riverkeeper can step in and try to take our own sampling and have an enforcement action when necessary. But Gadsden, I mean, they are voted in. They represent you, and they want to hopefully continue to serve you in the public. So I think it's much easier to take the more emotional angle and talk about how this affects you and your quality of life versus ADEM. You know, it's just more like this permit doesn't make logical sense. X, Y, or Z reason, and how it affects, ADEM's job is supposed to issue permits that are protective of air quality and water quality standards. To ensure that they uphold that charge is really where Coosa Riverkeeper and people like you can step in and say, this is not stringent enough for the people who fish and swim and boat in this area.
All right. I got one question that I think will follow along with that. So somebody asked, what would prompt ADEM to deny their application, and is this something ADEM normally does, or are they kind of a rubber stamp type organization?
I would say they are, as sad as I am to say it, they are a rubber stamp organization. They are beholden to the polluting industry, not necessarily to the people that are impacted. I mean, you could see that through the various fish kills that have been on the Blackwater the past couple years, and with the Tyson spill. I mean, it took over a year after all of the cane that was raised in that community for ADEM to acknowledge and fine that industry. So I would not say timeliness is one of their strong suits at all.
Did you have some more ADEM questions?
My only other, you've dealt with ADEM and you've been in front of them a few times. Just curious as to your experience and if they're dismissive, if they're actually accepting of what you're trying to say, or how does that normally go for you?
Well, at the last ADEM hearing, which was in Gadsden in the beginning of November, the COVID protocols make it really much more impersonal because they only have one person in the room at a time addressing the ADEM council. So I would prepare in the way that y'all have prepared for these Gadsden City Council meetings, having people outside and hollering, honestly, would be a huge benefit, because these ADEM hearings it's kind of like you say your piece and they don't respond to you. So you walk out hopefully feeling better because you did your due diligence to stand up for your community and your quality of life, including the air and water. But I find it to be, very strange feeling when you leave. It's not like I felt heard. I felt like I just talked to people nodding at me and got it on public record.
Does that answer
That's
your...
a great answer. It's not the answer I wanted to hear, but it's a very good answer.
And I mean, that's right now, obviously, a lot of what's going on in this group. We're trying to get folks that know what they're talking about, that are in the trenches, so to speak, to manage the expectations. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of wild rumors and all that kind of stuff. So it may not be pretty, but it's the truth, and it's what folks need to understand, the fight that we're in, how important it is to come tomorrow and show the support. Now, that being said, from talking with Christy and the legal team to manage those expectations, this will not be over tomorrow, most likely. But it can have a huge impact to have as many folks out there, obviously online, is great. And we're making sure that even some of the older folks that are involved with the city council that I think their kids and stuff are showing them on Facebook, that really, I mean, we're having a lot of impact there. So if you can't make it, it'll be over on the city Facebook page. But we really, really, really need everybody to show up. But yeah, that's thanks for painting an exciting truth about ATOM and the environmental protection process there.
Well, I think, another aspect of this is the reason that organizations like Coosa Riverkeeper, in addition to just being a 501c3 nonprofit, is that we rely on folks like you to help us have members in standing. So let's say that they build the facility and we start submitting comment letters. The reason that I say that we have 1,200 dues paying members is because I may be one person standing at that podium, but I like to imagine that there are 1,199 people behind me that have my back, that are putting their money where their mouth is, where their dock is. Memberships for us start at $10. And what that does is when I'm able to say and cite a specific member that's impacted by this facility, that makes our argument a little bit stronger. It makes, if we have to litigate, way stronger, because I can say, hey, so-and-so, how did this particular facility impact your quality of life? What did it mean for, your cattle that rely on this creek, and now the creek has a bacteriological problem? So that's a huge part of, for those of you that are members of Coosa Riverkeeper, you will be standing behind me tomorrow, ensuring that, I'm speaking for the river, but I'm also speaking for every single person that's watching this. Had a good time on the Coosa.
Well, I think we'll be sure to cheer you on when you get done speaking. So hopefully you'll be able to hear us inside.
So Hugh Stump dropped a question in there, but along the same lines before I throw this question at you. I will be, I want to admit publicly, so I earn a living off the resources of this area. I work at Bucks Island, promote the use of our water and kayaks and pontoon boats and fishing boats. And I've been aware of Coosa Riverkeeper, but I've never pulled the trigger to become a member. So I want to apologize for doing that. I fixed that today. Now, I think that's a pretty big theme in a lot of this that we're seeing. And I'm seeing a lot of discussion of that is, wow, okay, we need to get involved. And I know the elephant in the room for a lot of folks like you, that you've been doing this for so long. You're like, where were you? Where were you 6 months ago? Where were you 2 years ago? And so, who knew that this is what would really get a lot of attention and unite a community. But I hope that everybody else, I'm willing to say it publicly, for sure. Shame on me. So now you can add me to that number as you stand up there and talk to the council. And I'm excited to hear what you have to say, which is what Hugh Stump is asking. Yeah. Justinn, sometime tonight, give us a synopsis of what you plan to speak on tomorrow at the city council.
Well, thanks, Hugh. Appreciate that question. So tomorrow's speech is going to be a crash course in ATOM permitting and the impacts of this proposed rendering facility on land, air, and water. And then I'm going to close it out with how we need to be investing in the lake and building the economy around the lake and what that means for tourism, but also what that means for quality of life in the community. I don't imagine that anyone would argue with that. The Coosa River is a beautiful thing to not just drive over and for you work on and for me work on, but it's also a treasure that we need to ensure that we protect and that we build resources to increase access to, so more folks can come and enjoy the greater Gadsden area. If I can, I'd like to talk a little bit about, we've talked about the water a little bit, about pH and the bacteria, but I'd like to talk about land. That's something that hasn't really been brought up about how this affects land and ultimately water. So rendering facilities deal with their waste 3 ways. The first way is that, and I'm talking about they pre-treat on the site. They discharge it to a local wastewater treatment plant after they pre-treat is the first way. The second way is they spread it and call it beneficial use fertilizer. They spread it and it's called biosolids. I say beneficial use fertilizer because it is a sludge. And we've had some people reach out to us saying they've already had this experience in Etowah County. But for instance, the River Valley Ingredients in Hanceville, they spread their sludge all across surrounding counties. So Etowah County has already been receiving chicken sludge from a rendering plant from the Hanceville facility.
Oh,
so
that sounds bad.
Yeah, very bad. So what happens when it rains, right? Let's say they've spread this application and it rains. It's going to make its way into a local waterway. And if you're like me, a rain is, for a lot of people at the time, right after they want to get on the water, the creeks are swollen, they want to go paddle. The dissolved oxygen is high in the water, so the fish are super active as long as the turbidity or the cloudiness is low in the water. So, this land application, when you look at that 5-mile radius on the map, and don't get me wrong, it's a great map. But when you add in the application of sludge, it's way bigger than 5 miles, y'all. I mean, this is going to affect many surrounding counties and communities and in the water quality in those areas. So I think that that the land application is something. We shared a video that was put together by the Southern Exposure Film Fellowship that features a family and actually someone who is an Etowah County resident in it who's already been impacted by this. We were able to successfully pass a local amendment in Talladega County that prevents the spread of septage, which is basically grease and stuff from restaurants and human waste. That's human waste. You heard me right. That we literally spread and call it fertilizer. It's 2020. You think we have found better ways to spread that stuff other than on a thin layer on top of our ground and call it a day. But that's a huge problem that we haven't really heard people address is this biosolid. And it's going to affect people far and wide and is already affecting people far and wide around the River Valley Ingredients facility.
So, and I know I can hear Hugh Stump, who is the director of tourism here in Etowah County. I can hear him saying, "Hey, how about the economic impact?" You said you bragged a little bit on Etowah County and Gadsden that you've actually got some numbers. So
I do, and thank goodness. I wish I had numbers like this for every reservoir on the Coosa chain. But I think that we oftentimes our state agencies or our industries make you choose between the environment and the economy, and that is an antiquated thought process. And Gadsden is at this critical moment where you can choose both, being good stewards of your river while also bringing in boatloads of money through things like bass fishing tournaments. I mean, in 2017, $10.4 million in new revenue came from bass fishing tournaments alone. And I'll tell you, this chicken rendering facility is a liability for the fishery. I've already mentioned the fish kills on the Mulberry Fork. I mean, having this facility is a liability to the economy. And I think that Gadsden City Council needs to understand they have a gold mine literally across the street from their council chambers in the Coosa River. And I mean, seeing what increasing access and investing in Coosa Landing and the riverfront property, I think only is going to build more folks spending time outdoors, which is good for mental health, especially in this weird year we're all experiencing. But I also think people are investing in and wanting to come to Gadsden because of the river, because of the access of the great amenities that y'all have. I'll tell y'all, there are some really bad boat ramps out there, but there aren't any bad boat ramps on Neely Henry, at least in my experience. And I think that plays a part in where tournaments, like Alabama Bass Trail has come through Gadsden, and see that grow into these nationwide, Bassmaster Elite coming in May 2021. Just seeing what that one bass tournament did in October. I was on patrol up in Neely Henry, and it was just so cool to be on the water and see these guys just buzzing by and thinking, where did they drive from? is this their first time? Like, I'm so glad they get to come to Gadsden and
Well,
enjoy
I can tell you definitively that was guys from pretty much every corner of America that came for that Bassmaster Open. So,
and it was incredible. So, I will talk about that a lot tomorrow in council is about, are we, and I proclaiming myself a person of Etowah County, are we a river town or are we a chicken town? Because we need to nip this in the bud, because I feel like we're a river town, and we have been since there were steamboats on the Coosa,
Well, so do you have the overall, the number, the dollar figure that they've put to, what they estimated the economic value is annually for?
So the total regional economic impact of Neely Henry Lake and the Coosa River is $570 million.
$570 million. And I'm gonna throw it out there, quite a few more than 60 to 90 jobs.
Definitely. I would definitely say that.
We have 33 at Bucks Island, and we're just a boat dealership and a tackle shop. So that's a pretty big end. Did you know it was that number was that big?
I had no idea.
You live out in the airport, painting planes and all that kind of stuff, and
that's big money.
There's a whole other discussion in the aviation, and we need to have that because that's right next door to you, literally right next door to you, is where they propose. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna get through. Well, while we were talking about the fishing tournament, how can we get Bassmasters involved? I don't want to speak out of turn, but honestly, I don't know there's a whole lot that they can do other than kind of tell us, not sure we want to come and hold a giant event. Obviously in a polluted environment, and certainly, but I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know what resources you've got to reach out to bass. I know we've got we've got 3 elite anglers that fish the Bassmaster tournaments, and some other connections. So maybe we can reach out to them and see. Reba, that's a good question and definitely something worth pursuing.
Hey Justin, I've got a quick thought, a rambling thought, but so this particular facility and the argument from Pilgrim's Pride is going to be that there's no wastewater in the system, right? That's going to be their argument. There's no leakage. It's a perfect system. So I think it's important to know that, I think this is a cumulative problem. This facility, although it's only going to be emitting so much into the environment, it's a cumulative problem with the facilities that are already there that do have a lot of seepage. And, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, what's the counter argument to Pilgrims?
Well, they say state of the art a lot. I would love to know what that actually means in practice, because, y'all are looking at me here. This is our water quality monitoring lab. And given my organizational size, this is state of the art. This is actually the 3rd largest citizen science water quality lab in the nation, no joke. And we're a rural program. But their argument is deflection. They haven't answered any of the straight questions that I feel like have been posed. And, when I watched their presentation at the last council meeting, I couldn't help but laugh at the truck analogy that they gave. I would argue that older trucks were better made and more simple, if they're going to use that analogy.
Right.
I think that resonates to some folks around here. We got a few folks that are into the cars.
So looking at the Pilgrims presentation, another one that stuck out to me too is they were bragging about a 99% recovery rate.
Yeah.
99% of 1.2 billion.
Mm-hmm.
We're still looking at 12 million pounds of waste and sludge. And if their calculations are off by 1 or 2%, I mean, 24 or 36 million pounds. And it's not, I don't think that's a stretch of the imagination. So, that kind of stuck out to me too.
Yeah, they're very versed in how to use numbers to give you some peace, like the $24 an hour average. I think they know what they're doing, obviously. But in terms of, I'm looking at their track record, right? And I'm looking at how this affected other waterkeeper organizations throughout the nation that are just like me. They love their respective waterways, and they're trying to hold polluters accountable to be protective of water quality and protective of the quality of life of the citizens around the area. And, $5 million in environmental violations, and the fact that was small compared to the other violations that they have. I can't imagine that this is a facility that we want to invite into our neighborhood and that we feel confident that are going to provide sustainable jobs where the people are well taken care of within the facility. And I mean, that's not my area of expertise, but I do think that that's something to consider.
So along some of that Josh Carlson said the other question I have is, if the water they emit is almost potable, why aren't they recirculating it into their own system?
Okay, that made me laugh when they said almost potable. It's either potable or it's not. There's no almost. You can either drink it and it's safe, or it's not. So I think they're just trying to save face. Because when I look at I look on EPA's echo of their other facilities, many of their other facilities have major violations of bacteria limits, and they are not anywhere near potable. They actually exceed EPA's water quality standards for whole body contact, which basically is the government's way of saying swimming. So that yeah. But I don't know why they're not recirculating it. Probably because it's not actually potable.
What's 1 million gallons a day, right? Is that what they're saying they're going to run through the facility, is 1 million gallons per day? Or did I get that wrong?
That sounds about right. Honestly,
I haven't done that much math.
I think a lot of folks we've talked, there's a lot of concern about odor. So I felt like, although I'm not an air quality expert, I at least wanted to educate myself so that I can speak truth to power to y'all. So they have already applied for an air quality permit, a Title V permit. And I worked with a statewide organization that focuses on air quality called GASP, and got kind of the nitty gritty of what rendering plants discharge into the environment in our air. And one of the main things that I learned about is nitrogen dioxide. Nitrogen dioxide is known to cause a host of issues, including may cause asthma. It can aggravate asthma. Aggravates basically your respiratory system as a whole. But one of the things that I read in the study was that the odor itself causes psychosocial problems like stress, like lack of concentration, loss of appetite. So although you may not be asthmatic or anyone in your family, when we're talking about the proximity to these schools, and it's hard enough for folks to concentrate, especially in this day and age where you're going to school and maybe being remote. This lack of concentration, I think, is something that we need to really address outside of the putrid smell that we should and could anticipate. The River Valley Ingredients rendering plant, from up until this point this year and the entire year of 2019, had 101 citizens file complaint with ADEM about just odor. 101.
Wow.
So where can, because we have definitely got some researchers in this group, where can folks go to find more information about the air impact that you're talking about, and get smarter on that stuff?
So you can, of course, look at the Title V permit. You can go to ADEM's e-file and search by the facility just to actually see the permit itself. Another thing is I would encourage people to look at actual medical journals and studies on the impacts of air quality. The Environmental Integrity Project has a great water pollution from slaughterhouse. Now, granted, I know this is a rendering facility, but it's all a part of the same chicken processing industry that, Jason Wilson brought up the broiler belt, which I had never heard of, but makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. So once we're peeling back the layers of these rendering plants, y'all, we need to be thinking about what this means for the processing plants, because we've got a lot of processing plants in this general area, and a rendering plant, I would love to see the city council pass a resolution that there will never be a rendering plant in Etowah County. If this is our one shot to do the thing that's the most, in terms of important for our environment, important for our economy, let's shoot for the stars and let's ask for what's the most stringent, because even if we land with just a vote no, at least we tried for a resolution. And I think that's something that would be possible because you have the attention of city council, and let's hope they vote no, but underline that no with a resolution to say not here ever. Anywhere
in Etowah County.
Well, and it's this ideology in conservation. It's called NIMBY, not in my backyard. So, the reason that a lot of folks have come out of the woodworks is because this issue is in your backyard. But it's going to be in somebody else's backyard. And I think that now that you're aware of what this rendering facility can do for you in your neck of the woods, I hope that you'll stay engaged in what chicken processing does to the greater community. And maybe that can help you make some more informed choices about who and where you buy your chicken from, and how that actually affects your community at large and the lake.
Maybe makes me want to raise my own chickens in my backyard. All right. Well, let me, you got any more questions, notes, stuff? I'm going to scroll through and see if I can find.
I'm going to hit on that real quick. Because I think you touched on something really good, which is the long-term positive from this. So for those of us who are, I'm an optimist. I think we're going to get this voted down. I don't think this facility is going to be built. But I don't want another one built in a year. I don't want to become complacent, and I don't want people to become complacent, and then one just shows up somewhere. So I think we need to take steps to make sure that it doesn't happen in the future.
Yeah.
On the environmental side, are there any avenues there to pursue, and have you dealt with any of that before?
Well, we stopped a toll bridge from being constructed. Now, granted, that's very different than a rendering facility. But we were able to get Shelby County to pass a resolution that there will never be a toll bridge over Lay Lake. And one of the selling points was noise pollution coming from that toll bridge. In addition to the sediment in that area of Lay Lake was chock full of PCBs. But to answer your question in terms of staying engaged, selfishly, I hope that all of you will follow Coosa Riverkeeper on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We are the only advocacy group that's focused on the middle and lower Coosa basins. We work from the headwaters of Big Bulls Creek all the way to Wetumpka. I have an incredible staff of 4, including me, and we work on 220 miles of the Coosa, 5,000 square miles of the state, and we have a less than $300,000 budget. So I think one of the main things they can do is stay engaged with us, because our job is to ensure that the places that you love are swimmable, drinkable, and fishable, and ensure that, we can keep an eye out. And when we have an issue that's coming into your backyard, that, you can hopefully trust us and count on us to let you know where you need to step up and step in. Because in this day and age, it's so hard. We're being bombarded with information. And, you can count on us to ensure that we are staying abreast and keeping you informed about issues that are affecting the places that you love.
Well,
that's great.
Josh asked, Justin, I know Pilgrim's Pride has a ton of environmental violations and lawsuits. Are there particular ones you're going to focus on in the 5 minutes tomorrow?
There aren't really particular ones. I'm more focusing on patterns. And the patterns are there are a lot of violations, and that they're not specific to a particular state, and they are not specific to a particular department of environmental management. You know, the folks were talking about how they went to Iowa and it was so nice in Iowa. Well, I will bet that Iowa's Department of Environmental Management probably does a better job than ours in terms of issuing permits that are strong for watershed protections and ensuring that when there is a violation, they're held accountable. I mean, think about it. I literally relate this to you're letting them grade their own papers, right? I mean, that's exactly what ADEM allows these industries to do. So that's why when you see something fishy, the most important thing you can do is take pictures and document what you're seeing. Whether that's a wastewater treatment plant spilling something, or if you see anything, a bunch of fish dead on the river, the best thing you can do is report that pollution to Coosa Riverkeeper and take pictures, simply because we work in a huge watershed and it cannot be everywhere all the time. But also I need to see it, you know, because it could be the lakes turning over and you just may not realize it. So I think, you know, I hope that through this we can arm people with better understanding what to look for when there is a problem in the watershed, and how to address it by reporting pollution, whether it be to us or to ADEM, and we follow back up with ADEM.
All right. Have you got anything else?
Justin's covered. I've got a lot to absorb and a lot of reading to do tonight. So
I'm learning this week. I've learned a ton. I've learned a lot about environmental, how we manage our environment. I've learned a lot about how we run our government around here. I mean, this has been a crazy week to think it, man. So I just got a message telling me that we're hearing that Pilgrim's Pride is actually sending somebody to be in here tomorrow. They're actually flying into our beautiful airport, apparently.
Oh,
So right now they're not showing as being on the agenda at all tomorrow. So don't know anything more about that. But I think I would reemphasize, if they're going to show up, let's get even more people standing out there, being seen, and let our voices be heard.
Well, in a weird way, I think that everyone should be very flattered that they're spending their organizational resources to fly someone out to come to this city council meeting. I think that means they're hearing us loud and clear, and you should be very proud of the movement that has come at the grassroots level. And it's been really wonderful to make so many new friends and have so many folks reach out with their love of the respect of whether it's Dry Creek, Canoe Creek, or just the river and the lake at large. So I'm not surprised. They're watching all these live videos, taking notes, preparing counter arguments. I mean, I hate to be like that, but that tends to be how it goes in these things.
And, you know, for us here in little old Etowah County, Alabama, you know, we're not probably used to, I mean, this is a very, 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 very large company. And so, yeah, you make a good point. We should be extremely flattered. That's great. I'll be flattered next week when they are gone and we don't hear from them anymore.
Next week. All I want for Christmas is no rendering plan.
Man, yeah, it would be a great way to end 2020, because this has been one heck of a year. So this has been amazing. I have been so encouraged with the activity in this group, the research. This rendering plant hits us from so many angles. I know, you know, Christy had a great conversation on the radio this afternoon. I mean, there's so many aspects of our community that are impacted by this thing. The airport, Jonathan wants new neighbors out at the airport. He just wants them to smell good, or at least smell like jet fuel. So this has been nuts, and I am blown away at what all the folks around Etowah County that are bah humbug and it'll never be anything more than ever was, and it's the same old. As Christy has said, we're not that county anymore, and it's up to us. It's up to us to change it if we want it to be better. Nobody else is going to. Certainly not Pilgrim's Pride, and certainly not their 60 jobs. We'll talk more about all the job stuff in the coming days. But thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to cheering you on outside, both figuratively and literally.
I'm excited. I think that this is going to be very interesting to witness. And I sure hope that Gadsden City Council will allow this group to have a presentation in the future. But hopefully we won't need it because they'll vote no and pass a resolution saying no rendering plant here ever. But until then, you can always reach out to Coosa Riverkeeper or me personally if there's anything that you have any ideas or tactics, or you just have questions about quality fish consumption advisories or pollution. Or I cannot share good fishing spots with you. I've been sworn to secrecy. But
that's why you should tune into our fishing reports. We'll take care of you.
I'm going to be on the show next time. That's the.
So guys, I'd encourage you, if you're not following Coosa Riverkeepers, give them a follow. At the very least, give them some follows and shares and help them out with their mission. And of course, get over there and your minimum donation is $10. Is that right? And then of course you can go up from there. And I know every little bit helps. I mean, look at her state-of-the-art facility behind her.
I should give y'all a tour, but maybe next time. I will say this, with the CARES Act, up to $300, if you itemize your deductions, can be put towards charitable contributions. So if you are in a position to give, that's great. If you're not, giving us information and giving us likes and follows also makes us smile. We work in a huge area, and we certainly need all the exposure that we can get. And we appreciate y'all. And thank you for everything y'all are doing to organize. I'm very grateful to get the chance to speak for this amazing river that has done so much for so many of us tomorrow. So thanks.
All right. Well, guys, go over there on Facebook, Instagram. Are y'all on TikTok? I haven't even looked.
This conversation in the office today about the TikTok. I sound like such a fogey, the TikTok. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't even know what's going there.
I know for a fact they're fishermen on TikTok.
Okay.
So, guys, I mean, this group ought to prove to Etowah County and the people around here the power of social media. I mean, we got a gigantic company like Pilgrim's Pride to hop in an airplane and fly down here. And I know a pivotal part of that is this little old group of folks here in Alabama. So thank you all so much for watching and hanging in with us. Thanks for the good questions and comments. Keep doing the research, keep submitting. Most importantly, show up tomorrow morning, and let's try to put some nails in some coffins to get this to bed. But it hopefully maybe another week. That's the hope. We'll see. Put the pressure on the councilman. Keep talking to your elected officials and talk to everybody at work. I don't know. I mean, maybe when you order something at Jack's, hey, have you heard about what they're trying to do? So guys, thank you all so much. Jonathan, you got anything else?
No, just thank you to Justinn. The first day we started the Facebook page, she was on there and we chatted the first day and she's like, I'm in. What do we got to do? So thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Thank you for organizing. Y'all are really the unsung heroes, because facilitating such a large group and so many conversations at the same time makes my head spin, and y'all are making it seem easy. So thank you.
We're gonna start crying when this is over.
Well, thank y'all so much. I'll for those of you that are watching, I won't see you tomorrow, but I'll feel your presence tomorrow. And we'll see you in the crowd. I hope to see everybody out after the meeting is over, and look forward to hopefully putting some faces with some names I've seen on my Facebook a lot lately. So.
All right. Well, guys, y'all have a good night, and share, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
See y'all tomorrow, and y'all take it easy.
All right. Later, guys.